channel. Uh, in this video, I'm going to show you three different DIYs: a wood pumpkins, a burlap pumpkin, and a fall sign. Some of the materials I will be using are paintbrushes, some burlaps, different size burlaps, styrofoam pumpkin, acrylic paints, as well as chalk paints, some branches, scissors, garden shears, um, and hot glue. And I think, yeah, and then I will be using a scrap piece of wood that I found around the house. So three are, I think they're 2x6s, and then just this board. I really don't know what kind of board that is. Yeah, so I will be making, the first project will be the wood pumpkins that are made from different sizes of 2x6s. So I start with cleaning it up, sanding down the sides, and yeah, just I use a sanding block. Once all the sides have been sanded down completely, I start with painting, and I use just orange acrylic paint that I have purchased at a dollar store, as well as the foam paint brushes from the dollar store. I didn't have to take off too much stuff off of the wood, so but it's important to clean it off just if there's any, even just cobwebs or loose pieces of wood and things like that. This was Pinterest inspired, by the way. Um, I use some different materials, but I guess the end result was somewhat like on the Pinterest. So I did 2 coats of this, so I had to wait in between for it to dry. But you could still see a little bit of wood leaking through, like the color leaking through, but that's okay. It kind of gave it a bit of a rustic feeling. Once everything was painted on the sides, I just dabbed a little bit of paint on top, so it was covered with paint on all the sides. So here are the pieces of wood that I had picked up from my garden, and I just cut them to size. And once the tops have dried, I start by gluing those pieces of branches or twigs or whatever they're called onto the tops. You want to be pretty generous with the glue, and I put the glue underneath and then a little bit around it as well, so it would stay. I had to clean it off here because there was a little bit of a loose end sticking out, I guess. So I trimmed it, and then I hot glued it back on. So, and my hot glue as well as the hot glue sticks, all came from the dollar store. I cut down the piece here because it was a little bit too big, and for the third one, as you will see, I also cut it on a bit of an angle because for it to sit properly, because the wood, I really didn't want it to have to cut the wood straight because it's kind of hard to do that for me anyways. So I just left the wood looking the way it is, and so that's why I had to, as you can see over here, it's a bit on a bit of an angle, so I just cut the twig on an angle as well. So once these have dried, I ended up decorating them with a little bit of burlap and some um, fake leaves. Test it, make sure they're dry, and then I just had some leaves that had fallen off of the garland that I used to decorate my mantles. So, and I just cut them so that way I can just stick them into the burlap. The burlap ribbon, I guess, or I'm not sure what that's called, but these are the two that I had purchased at Dollarama, at the dollar store. And I just cut the burlap into halves. I kind of eyeballed the measurements as to how long I needed it. Also with burlap, another piece of the material that I used were, I guess it's twine. Is it? I'm not quite sure what type of material it is, but I think it's very fall looking. So let me know in the comments if you know what this is called, because I, for the life of me, cannot remember what that's called. I just had it laying around from previous crafts. So I thought I use it. So I just layered that with ribbon, and all I did was tie it up, cut off the excess ends, and that was it. I just think it made it look simple but elegant, I guess, or polished looking. So here's the finished project. Um, I just I'm was quite happy how it turned out, and it was really inexpensive. Um, I just bought the ribbon and the burlap ribbon and the rest of the stuff I had laying around the house. I had the paint already, but even if I didn't, it was $1. And then the paint brushes were $1, and I used not even a whole pack for the whole project, but for all three projects. So I'm quite happy how it turned out. And here you can also see um, it's not very tall, but it's perfect. The next project is the burlap pumpkin, and here it is on my living room coffee table. I think it turned out really nice. It was one of those, I wanted to add a little bit of browns and earthy tones, I guess, into my decor, and this was perfect. I had the styrofoam pumpkin laying around. Actually, last year I bought it for crafts to do with the daycare, and it was left over, and then I was debating what to do with it, so I decided to do this. Um, this is another branch from my garden that we had cut down a tree, so I had all these branches laying around for fire, so I just picked it up out of the garden and cut long enough piece. It was a little bit tough to cut. I just didn't want it to saw anything, so I just yeah, and then trimmed off the little loose branches. Sand off any loose ends or sharp ends. And you can pretty much use anything that resembles, I guess, a pumpkin stem that you could put in there. It doesn't have to be the branch. You can make it look more, I guess, more like the pumpkin stem, but I really like the way this looks. So this is the burlap that I was using, and again, it's from the dollar store. And all I did was I shove it at the top. Here I'm just measuring to know how many pieces I need to cut. So I think I ended up cutting 12 altogether. Was it 12 or was it 6? I'm not sure. No, it was actually, I think, 8 pieces. So, and then I just wrapped it around the pumpkin, as you will see. And I used the hot glue to secure it at the bottom. Just be very careful. I did end up burning the tips of my fingers a little bit. Always do that. I know to be careful, but yet I always do it. So stretch it tight. See right there. Right there. That's where I burnt my finger. So, and then when I put the second one, I just overlapped it. I think it gave the overlapping edge. It was kind of nice how it gave a little bit of a different dimension, I guess. And then just secure the edges. Once I was satisfied how it looked, I just made sure all the edges were secured and not flopping over or loose. And there it is. And then actually the branch that I had cut ended up fitting perfectly in with all that extra burlap there, as you can see. So I just pushed it in and I secured it with glue all around inside of it. And that's it. Very simple. Once again, cost me under, I would say under $2 to do this whole project. Sometimes you'd be surprised at all the things you can find around your house. They can be pretty crafty, and I love Pinterest for ideas. So here it is on my coffee table. The next project is this fall sign. I used this piece of wood, but I wanted to make it look like it was more than just one piece of wood. So I used the shears to kind of score lines or make dented in line into lines. So it looked like there were three pieces of wood there. So for this project, I used the old white, um, as well as French linen. These are all anti-Sloan chalk paints, and graphite, which I'll show you later. But what I did with both of these paints is I have watered them down by adding some into the cup, a little bit of paint, and then I add water. It just makes it a little bit more, I guess, wetter. I don't quite know how to explain it, and translucent, so and easier to kind of mix both colors. I applied both paints wet, so I didn't wait in between for them to dry, so it kind of mixed them all together, and I think it gave me the look that I was looking for. I was kind of looking for that driftwood look type, so and I think I have achieved. So as you can see, I'm still using the same paint brushes that I have used for the other project. So first I applied the washed down all white. So once I applied all white everywhere, I start with the French linen and follow the same steps. So once I was done with French linen, this is the step that I used the graphite, and this again is anti-Sloan chalk paint in graphite, and I actually had very little left from a mantle before that I had finished. You should check that video out if you'd like. I already watered it down. So, and I use the graphite to get into the grooves that I've made to make them look a little darker. So I apply a pretty thick layer of that, and then I take just a paper towel, and I kind of try to rub some off, but at the same time spread it around the edges of it as well. So I repeat this process a few times to achieve the, like I said, I was looking for that driftwood look. So, and then I had also put some onto the paper towel and just kind of rubbed it in gently, very gently. Rub it on the edges and all kind of all over, not really following a pattern or anything like that. So. So here it is. Um, I quite like the way it turned out. Um, the next step, what I do is I use a pencil and I write out fall on it, just Fall. I use a pencil to outline it because I'm not the greatest in writing, so I'd like this to be more of a template that I make with the pencil before I apply the paint over it. This way, if you make a mistake, you can always just erase it. And I did wait for the paint to dry before I had wrote the letters on it. I just didn't want any of it to spread, so I don't spread it with a pencil. So once I was done writing it out, I used another Annie Sloan paint, and this one was in Chateau Gray. And as you will see, I started off with just that one, and then I found that it was a little too light, so I actually ended up mixing it with graphite. I mixing graphite in there, and I used a thin paintbrush to do the outline, and then I used the thicker paintbrush to paint it in. So as you can see, I'm not quite happy with the way the color looked, so I ended up adding the graphite into it. I also use a graphite at the end to outline the letters. And I don't really measure anything, it's just I mix it until I get the desired shade. Once I was done using the graphite and the Chateau Gray, I ended up applying just a light layer of this gold acrylic paint on top of it, just to give it some depth and some little bit of shimmer. Not too much, just a little bit. So I hope you like this. I hope this was inspirational. As you can see on the sign, my writing's not the greatest, but I am quite pleased as the way the whole thing turned out. And I had placed it on top of my mantle right there, and I think it looks nice in my opinion. So I hope you liked this video. I hope it was inspirational for you to do your own DIY projects. And if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.